This is Truthful Manipulation, where truth is the truth and reality is made real and clear to understand. I'm Dave Kelsey, and I'm here today with my co-host, H. Daniel Mujahid. This week on Truthful Manipulation, we're going to have a conversation about how to use truthful manipulation without becoming a manipulator yourself. Because we know today that as leaders have influence. And leadership itself is influence in every shape. Influence shapes our decision. It shapes our behaviors. And the question isn't whether a leader is a manipulator or not. The question is, do you manipulate with truth or with self-interest? And that's where we separate the difference between a principled leader and a manipulator. And this week, we want to talk to you about truthful manipulation defined and what all that means. Daniel, what does truthful manipulation defined means to you?
Thanks, Dave. I think it's having the responsibility to use our influence with good intention, transparently, even ethically, in a way to guide people, our family, our neighbors, towards outcomes that benefit both of us.
We got to jump back there for a second, because I think this is something that we got to talk about. And you said ethical.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one thing that we see missing in most every leader today. Because ethical translate, what would another definition of ethical be to you, Daniel? I know what it would be to me.
I would use words like, in our last week's show, we talked about the value of trust, faithfulness, trust, being studious, being sincere, having the right type of integrity of intent.
And how about this? How about trust?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we lose when we don't use ethical manipulation. But I think a lot of people are confused about what ethics actually are today. And they're confused about what ethics actually are because remember when we originally started this podcast, we started it with these expectations that we were going to be able to somehow or another convince people that ethics were one of the most important things that you could have in life. And we're on episode, this is either going to be 76 or 77, depending on how we put them on. But over that period of time, I've come to the conclusion that we have a lot of people out there that don't know what the word ethical even means anymore, because there's such unethical leadership examples at every turn that people just don't know what the difference between an ethical manipulator and unethical manipulator is, because they don't understand what the difference between ethical and unethical is. Do you feel the same way, or is it just something I'm feeling today?
Well, I like your key point differentiator about having the responsible influence on others. And I think that when you say that, you're talking about whatever our function might be, whether it's a parent, a child, a coach, a teacher, a leader. And I think that it does bear that we come to common terms about what we mean by certain words. And so I guess I'd like to kind of like lay that out, Dave, if you will help me do that in terms of what is the difference between a manipulator and a truthful leader.
Well, let's think about it. This is what the manipulator does. The manipulator hides their motives. Well, the truthful leader states their intentions. There's a big difference in those two things. If you're
Yeah.
hiding your motives, you're manipulating. If you're stating your
Mm-hmm.
intentions, you're trying to get people on your side.
Mm-hmm.
If you're using
Mm-hmm.
fear, guilt, or pressure, you're a manipulator.
Okay.
But you also, if you're not a manipulator, you use clarity with purpose. You just don't tell them clearly what you need, but you show them what the purpose of what you're doing is and why it's valuable. Once again, you're building consensus. Whereas a
What I'm looking at, Dave, yeah, what I'm looking at, Dave, in the world is I see a lot of situations now, especially the practices of our federal administration, where somebody is going to win and somebody's going to lose. Put that in the context of manipulators and truthful leaders for us, Dave.
Well, that one's really simple, Daniel. A manipulator wins for themselves while others
Mm.
lose. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They win for themselves while others lose or others are set back, where the truthful leader or the truthful manipulator creates shared wins because we're all better when everybody wins.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the manipulator try to do to cover their tracks? They distort the information.
Yeah.
They distort it to the point where people don't know your truth, my truth. Who's to tell? The
Mm-hmm.
truthful manipulator tells the full truth. No matter what
Mm.
the consequences, they tell the
Mm.
full truth, not your
Mm.
version of the truth. There's only one version of the truth, and it's not an
Mm.
opinion. Okay. That's what the problem with today is. You've got a lot of people that think that their opinion is the truth. And when they're
Mm.
caught, they try to prove that their opinion is the truth when it's not.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
And the
Mm.
manipulator always seeks to control others.
Mm.
Where the truthful manipulator, the truthful leader builds ownership with others. The reason you build ownership with others is because if you can get everybody to buy in, you're going to have a much better outcome.
Mm.
But you know what the manipulator's in for, Daniel?
What's that?
And we see this over and over and over today. A short-term gain. A short-term gain with some group or another. A short-term gain here or there. Where the truthful manipulator strives for long-term trust. You hear
Mm.
that last word?
There's
That's
that word again, trust.
that word
Yes.
is trust. And the trust has been broken. And in order for the trust to be restored, we have to have truthful manipulators, just not manipulators. If today's episode's hitting home and you want a clear framework for recognizing manipulation and responding with integrity, check out our book, Truthful Manipulation, A Roadmap to Live By. It's built for real life business, relationships, leadership, because the goal isn't to win, it's to win without losing yourself. And if you're new here, follow the Truthful Manipulation podcast for weekly conversations on spotting red flags, staying grounded under pressure, and choosing influence over control. Search Truthful Manipulation wherever you get your podcasts and grab the book to go deeper. Now back to the episode.
You reminded me, Dave, when I was growing up in the way back in the 50s and 60s, it seemed like to me every bank would have in its name somewhere the word trust. Then all of a sudden they started dropping. I remember Detroit Bank and Trust. Then all of a sudden they changed the name, no longer trust. And I think this idea of losing trust that you're getting at is one of the ingredients that America must return to if we are to move towards our destiny as a group of human beings on this planet Earth.
Yeah, it's funny that you would have used that example, Daniel, because I had forgot about that. You talk about Detroit Savings and Trust. I remember Genesee Savings and Trust, and they all had the word trust in them because you were trusting those financial institutions weren't going to do something bad with your money. And you do know where that came out of, don't you?
If I were to guess, I would say the Depression era.
I would say, if I had to guess too, that would be what my guess would be, is after the Depression, after all of the banks failed, they didn't have any choice but to gain the trust back of the population. And the only way they could do that is over time and not being manipulative. But you're right, it was during the 80s the trust was removed, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it wasn't that the trust was removed because the financial institutions were changing. The financial institutions were combining. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember those mergers.
Yeah,
yes.
when those mergers happened, they kind of lost the trust of the general public. So you couldn't really use bank and trust in your name when people didn't trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, it proved to be correct that the banks were untrustworthy. If you don't believe that, I'll like to take you back to 2008 and introduce you to the bankers that damn near ruined the world, because guess what, Daniel?
Go ahead.
They were untrustworthy. And then after they were untrustworthy, after they made all of their money at our expense, you know what they said?
What's that?
Bail us out. Talk about a manipulation. If I have a business and I run it improperly and it goes bust, the government doesn't come in and bail me out. Why would the government have bailed out a failing institution that there were criminals at the top? That isn't it funny, Daniel? We see this over and over again, and this manipulation leads back to the same thing. The guys at the top don't use truthful manipulation in their business practices. They just use manipulation. And they manipulated us to the point in that case where the world paid for all of those guys' mistake. And then guess what, Daniel? When we went in and talked to them about getting money for our franchisees, you know what they said?
What's that?
They had the audacity to go, well, we don't know if we want to loan any money for you guys of this. And I looked at them and said, you guys just about ruined the world, and you've got the audacity to sit there and talk to us like that. The vast majority of you should be locked up in prison somewhere for what you're doing. But because it's a white collar crime, it's not considered the same. We sort of talked about this a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? About the inequality in the legal system, how it's stacked against the minorities. And unless we can get these people to start working with ethical manipulation instead of just manipulation in general, we're going to have a problem. But we have to get them to remove the hidden agendas, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
And how would a truthful leader say remove agendas, Daniel? What would they say to do that?
I think they would try to get the people to see what's right in their own actions and what is in their best interest versus trying to push an agenda.
I agree. I totally agree with that. A truthful manipulator would say to people, here's what I'm hoping we can achieve together. And yes. I guess that's the word that's missing in a lot of society today, because I don't hear in the U.S. a lot of us being together. Do you hear that much anymore, Daniel? I hear a lot of
from around the world. From around the world, there's a lot of criticism on the changes that has happened in this American way of government today. But I don't know, Dave, if it seems like the lines are drawn and people are either going to ignore, put their heads in the sand, and just hope for a better day. So I think that the responsibility is going to be on those of us speaking out to find a way to get leaders to accept this reality. And that's what
we're going to have to have. We're going to have leaders emerge that are actually truthful manipulators. We need somebody to emerge that has vision with clear meaning, that's willing to take responsibility and grow together. That's what this country needs. We need somebody that will help us grow together, understanding that we're all the same. We may all have different backgrounds. We may come from different places originally, but we're all one thing for sure. We're human beings. And if you're in this country, you have some rights, whether you're an American or not. Just because we've got somebody that's evil that's at the head does not mean that the rest of us don't think that you're important, because we do. You're part of us. We are not them. And they did this. That's what the problem is, Daniel. The government did this. They gave us no vision. They gave us a meaning to hate them for. They made it our responsibility to do something about it, and they made it so that the movement against them will only continue to grow.
Well, there's no question your point. America is in a sense, you can say America is burning, and this fire is political, and this fire is in our religious community, it's in our neighborhoods, it's in our families. And I think that we have to accept that if it is a fire, we have to understand that fire can be used for good or not. I remember in one of your writings you talked about how fire could burn a house down, but at the same time it could also heat it up.
If this episode is making you reflect, here's the next step. Our book, Truthful Manipulation, A Roadmap to Live By, breaks down the difference between influence and control so you can lead, sell, parent, and partner with integrity, not games. And if you're new here, hit the follow on the Truthful Manipulation podcast for weekly conversations on spotting red flags, handling pressure, and choosing the truth, even when it costs you in the moment. Search Truthful Manipulation wherever you listen. Grab the book, and let's build credibility that lasts. Now, back to the show.
So it depends on what our intention is. And I think that's the split that we're seeing in America right now, is people have decided to support evil in its most intricate nuances versus standing up for what is right. And that is the time that we're living in, Dave, where we have to find a way to get Americans to stand up for what is right and forbid what is wrong.
The patriotic Americans need to stand up and be loyal to the country, not to a particular person. We also need to respect each other. And we need to use a psychology of safety. No one should be scared. It's only been in the last few years that people's security has been taken away. And that was done on purpose by a few. But truthful manipulators build long-term commitments and long-term agreements that will last and stand the test of time. So here's the leadership test. And this is what you should ask yourself. If your influence techniques were recorded and made public, would you be proud or embarrassed? Manipulators work in the shadows. Truthful leaders can stand in the light. And that's this week's episode of Truthful Manipulation. Please comment on today's show at truthfulmanipulation@gmail.com. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe at truthfulmanipulation.com. Pick up a copy of our book, Truthful Manipulation. It'll help you see these manipulations in your life and keep working to be a truthful manipulator. Thank you for listening this week.